Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over the market. Let's talk about what is happening to Tesla stock, what we can expect moving forward and all that good stuff. So if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc. Well, again, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day as the market is trading. Definitely check that out. That link is of course down below. Constant updates, right? So definitely check it out. I'd love to have you there. For just $3 a month, I'm going over to the thing that shows the prices very quickly here if you don't mind. $3 a month, that's all it is for the first tier, the Tesla tier. Again, I'm not trying to make it expensive or something crazy. I'm not trying to act like I'm the best trader in the world and you better pay $500. Just $3. Nice, quick, cheap. Not trying to make anyone worried about it. For the Tesla, all the Tesla updates, $5 includes NVIDIA, $7 includes non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA charts. And over the weekend, I do chart requests with members on Discord. But jumping into it, Tesla, the market is still open for another hour and a half. I have to head out, unfortunately, in about 20 minutes. So I'm recording these in advance. It is what it is. But looks like it'll be closing. We'll just say somewhere around the sort of 318-ish, give or take, of course, on the day and the week. So let's talk about what to look for. I want to start off with the weekly chart. Now, obviously, pretty nice recovery on Tesla stock, right? I mentioned yesterday how, despite it looking pretty gloomy, we're technically still making a higher low. We're still technically holding this pennant, right? There's no, it feels bad. But there was no real reason to panic, at least not yet, right? There could have been. We could have went lower. We could have dropped below 300 or 295, roughly, right? Give or take. Yeah, okay. And then we could have started, maybe now's the time to worry. But we didn't. That's the point. We didn't, right? We actually held exactly what Tesla needed to. So the bulls are hanging on. The bulls are definitely hanging on, right? Now, and we're getting that bounce, like I mentioned, right? I mentioned at the very least we go sideways, but I'd be very surprised if we just plummeted straight down today, for instance, or early next week, because we were just too extended to the downside. The exponential moving averages were way too high for how low we were. So naturally, at the very least, sideways action, if not a small little mean reversion. I'm not gonna lie, it happened pretty quick, but nonetheless, it's to be expected. It's kind of what we got already, right? Sometimes it happens pretty quick with Tesla. It's a pretty emotional stock. But going to the weekly, this is where I want to kind of put your attention to, right? Now, the weekly, unfortunately, again, I'm not going to be here when the market closes. It sucks, but it is what it is. But the one thing to watch out for is how does Tesla close? Because if Tesla, in my opinion, closes lower than about 317.5 to or worse, this does risk printing a bearish engulfing candle, right? Which is engulfing the body of today's, or I guess this week's candle will engulf the body of last week's candle, right? And that would be a bit of a concern, right? That definitely would be, a bit of a concern. And any, continued weakness, let's say, into next week and, any weak closures, especially below 300, will be an extra sign of caution, in my opinion, and potentially extra bearishness. Now, let's see how we close. Do we get that bearish engulfing or not? Unfortunately, you'll have to, check that out for yourself when the market closes because I won't be here to update that. But something definitely worth mentioning. And unfortunately, the MACD is not getting that bullish crossover. You can see it's been sideways for many weeks now, like 2 months roughly almost at this point, right? But we're just not getting that bullish crossover. We're not really getting that pump that we really need to get out of here. So going to the daily. Now, like I said, and even just before earnings, obviously I mentioned how I would like to see something like this, but obviously we're not going to get exactly what you want. That's not how the market works. But the overall picture I mentioned, everyone was kind of, mentioning how they think this earnings is going to gap it up and it's going to explode and go northward, blah, blah, blah. But I mentioned, there's, a pretty big pennant still. There's still a lot of room in this pennant and, wouldn't shock me if we continue chopping. And honestly, I still think that, even though I've obviously been right on that aspect, there is still a chance that we continue chopping at least for another week or two. Like, in my opinion, at least another week or two, because there's just simply a lot of room in this pennant still, right? Usually with these pennants, you'd like to get a little more closer to the apex of the pennant, get tighter and tighter and tighter, continue making lower highs, higher lows. And then eventually there'll be some catalyst will come out that it always does. It's just crazy how that works. But some catalyst will come out, a good one or a bad one. I don't know for sure. But a good one or a bad one will come out. Now they propel the stock up above the pennant, which in that case, we break out of the pennant and now we can finally get a direction, or below the pennant, also break out of the pennant, we can finally get a direction. Unfortunately, until something like that happens, there is no direction. Tesla doesn't really have anywhere to go. We're going to continue chopping. We can go, back down to like, let's say, low 300s, then we can get back up to 315, then back to 330, then back to 350. Just expect overall chop. The levels that need to happen, the levels that need to break for us to finally get like an actual direction in the stock and to not just continue essentially going sideways. Because, a lot of people are getting very emotional, right? People were like excitedly, super bullish here, super bearish here. Now they're super bullish here. When the price is the exact same price it has been for like months at this point, right? Literally months. That's kind of what volatility does. This price can trade within like a $40 range, which is pretty much doing. But because it moves up and down like $10, sometimes every other day, almost it feels like, people get emotional, right? People get emotional. Despite the price in the exact same position it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, right? So keep that in mind. There's no reason to get emotional here. It's not going anywhere. It hasn't went anywhere. And it's not going to go anywhere, in my opinion, for probably another couple of weeks, unless some crazy catalyst comes out. Again, why? Pennant. Still in it. Still a lot of room in it. So as far as I'm aware, until I see a breakdown or a breakout, I expect us to continue being and chopping within this pennant. And if even this earnings couldn't do it, we're going to need something else, right? So Tesla's in a very delicate spot here. If all the political news wasn't able to drop it, and pretty bad, I mean, the earnings call was still pretty bad, wasn't able to drop it out of this pennant to the south side, but robotaxi launching, for instance, et cetera, wasn't able to break it to the outside of it as well. What's going to break it in either direction, good or bad? I don't know. Something's going to have to come out. Some catalyst will come out. Something will propel the stock one of these directions. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. But what we do know, there's no reason to rush, no reason to panic. Let the chart do its thing. Let the stock do its thing. Let it compress. Let it play out this pennant. And we should get a direction sometime, in my opinion, in August. Probably middle of August is my guess personally, but we'll see. So that's kind of what I see right now. It is coming back to the EMAs, potentially treating it as a resistance, right? In the 1 hour, for instance, we have the Fibonacci's. As we know, we kind of had this potentially a dead cat bounce, if you will, right into the 618 Fibonacci that I shared with my members earlier today, right? Got a beautiful rejection off of it so far. And now, there's really no setup, unfortunately, right? I wish I can tell you, oh, this is what's going to happen tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. But as it stands right now, there is no blatant setup, right? Like I said, I would have liked to see a setup that looked like this from earnings, and then we kind of dripped down and then head higher, but we didn't get that. Instead, we just came to the bottom, which in itself was a setup because you're now near major support. But the thing is pretty much right here at around 317 roughly, give or take, there is no setup. The stock is honestly almost as neutral as you can be. Why? Well, it's pretty much dancing right dead smack in the middle of the exponential moving averages. It's right in the middle between the pennants, between the resistance and support. It's not near anything major like that. So we're at the end of the day, because it's evidently a chop range, there's no setup. There's nothing that can really be done from here, at least not on the daily. Now on the 1 hour, we can start eyeballing it. Maybe we're setting up a bit of a bull flag here in the 1 hour, right? Okay, that could be a possibility, right? Let's continue monitoring that. We can get some setups on the smaller time frames, so I'll continue monitoring that, of course. But in terms of the daily, we can get something like this, for instance, get a nice little bull flag and then head higher. That's something I'll be watching for going into Monday potentially. But in terms of the daily, there is no setup. The only setup is this large pennant, which, like I said, is going to require patience. So hopefully patience is something you have. What else is there? The 4 hour SMI, pretty much right in the middle, not at the top range, which I mentioned up here. It was in the top range going into earnings. I mentioned that many times, but it's not really at the bottom range either. So, I kind of just wait for one of those things, right? So in case you're wondering what I'm looking for and what I'm waiting for, 1 hour, do we get a bullish flag here? Cool, we might. Still too early. Usually these take a little bit longer, right? I'd want to see a bit more of a bull flag personally, but, let's monitor that. That's number one I'm looking for. Number two, 4 hour SMI. Do we get an SMI? Especially if we get this bull flag on the 1 hour, and let's say we come back down lower on this bull flag. For instance, let's take a look here, right? Let's just assume that it's something like this. And let's say we get this bull flag right into the Fibonacci's. There may be the 0.5, maybe even the 618, ideally closer to like 312 to 309. And then we get this bull flag, and the 4 hour SMI off of that ends up kind of getting close to this green area all the way down here. Okay, now we potentially have a little bit of a play here setting up. Okay, now we're getting interesting. Shorter term, yeah, okay, we got something spicy setting up. Let's monitor that. But that's kind of what I'm looking for as it stands right this very moment. Yeah, there's nothing that much, guys. There's nothing much to say right now. There's not anything actually showing itself off just yet. So let's continue monitoring that moving forward. And then the daily, like I said, that's the bigger time frame. The daily and the weekly are both suggesting we're in this massive pennant, technically a bullish pennant, but it doesn't mean it has to play out in bullish fashion. So let's also continue monitoring that as we continue going forward from here. But all in all, that's probably all I got for you. In terms of options flow, something did hit the tape today that was very interesting. Someone actually made a lot of money on this one right here. They bought 1 million calls at 312 when the price is 312, 302 strike, 0 day to expire. Pretty wild stuff, actually. They probably made a decent amount on that. But what I really want to point your attention to, if I can find it, I think it's this, yeah, is this right here. Someone loaded the boat today, right? Someone was buying 630 and 620 strike calls for Tesla stock, almost a year out, just under a year out, 05/15/2026. And they were buying a decent amount of them. You can see the size is very heavy, at least relative to the the average size of or the open interest, I should say, of the contract. But nonetheless, someone was buying a decent amount of calls, 630 and some 620s as well. Again, all 05/15. What is that? May 15th. pretty decent size. I mean, it's not something absolutely unbelievable, but I mean, it's not too bad either. It's not too bad either. You have a 200K here, 300K, 300K, 200K, 300K, 200K, 300K, 2.5K, you know, pretty interesting. So that's worth mentioning. You know, let's see. I mean, someone just, you know, has a lot of money to throw on lottos, or maybe someone knows something, or, you know, again, keep in mind, it's almost a year out. So if there was something urgent, like let's say robotaxi news over the weekend, this probably would have been like a month or two out instead. Let's be honest here. But still pretty interesting. Someone's clearly bullish in the next, you know, several months, maybe heading into end of the year. Let's see. But overall, the final thing is the pennant, right? So if we break out of the pennant, I do expect about a $60 move from the breakout. For instance, if we break above 340 in the pennant, I expect about a $60 move to closer to $400 per share. On the flip side, breaking below about, you know, again, 300-ish below the pennant, probably a $60 move to the downside, probably closer to, I don't even know what this line is. What the hell did this come from? Probably closer to about 250, 240, something like that. So about a $60 move in either direction is what I expect, at least as of right now. Anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.